So I've had my onexplayer for a while now, and I thought I'd share some tips on how to have the best experience with it. The first tip, and probably the most important tip I can give you, is use this device with an open mind. Understand the hardware, its limitations, but understand these limitations don't ruin the gaming experience. If you're coming from desktop PC gaming and you're used to high-end hardware, high FPS, or high refresh rates, then it's going to be easy for most of you to make this mistake of wanting to do more than the device can handle. After some time with this device, I've been enjoying it so much that I almost don't turn on my main gaming PC, and it has me questioning why I even spent so much money to have the top components when I'm enjoying games at much lower settings. So if you're considering one of these devices or you have one already, approach it with an open mind and understand that it's going to be different from traditional PC gaming. Alright, so the next tip I'm going to give you is start with the baseline overclock. A lot of people will make the mistake of just maxing out all the settings, and I'll explain later why that's not always a good idea. I like to start with a 23 watt TDP, as this allows the GPU and CPU to hit decent clock frequencies with decent device temps and doesn't drain the battery as much. As for the GPU, I usually leave it at max, even though some games do play better at default. The problem is, if you leave it at default, the clock speeds tend to fluctuate, and sometimes you want more of a static overclock so you can reduce the stutters in a game. CPU frequency, I leave at 70%, turbo off, but understand some games like Modern Warfare 2 are going to require turbo to be on. All the other settings are going to be per your preference. As you learn how the device responds to certain games, you could adjust the settings from there. Alright, so the next tip I can give you is start with low settings and try to keep VRAM low. Now, if there is FSR available, use quality, and then work your way down from there. Um, in most games, when starting a new title, I try to keep everything low to medium, see what FPS I get. I tend to lower the shadows all the way down to low because I just feel like they don't add much benefit there and they kind of eat through resources. And I try to focus on level of detail, reflection qualities, and texture qualities. Alright, so I just want to make a quick note here that in all the benchmarks that I'm performing, I am running reshade, I am running screen recording in the background, so expect lower than expected FPS, maybe around 5 average, and we'll take a look at the scores. Now I know what you're thinking, 32 FPS.
What the fuck is going on?
Relax, take a deep breath. My next tip is going to be stop chasing 60 FPS. I usually play on a 390 Hz monitor, and my graphics card can achieve 240 FPS and higher in most games. But the more you play on this device, the more you're going to realize that it's not necessary. I found that most games between 30 and 40 FPS are still just as enjoyable, especially single player titles like Cyberpunk, Hogwarts, Red Dead, Elden. Even in competitive titles like Modern Warfare 2, getting between 45 FPS and 55 FPS feels much better than 60 FPS occasionally. And in my next video, we will discuss competitive games. Instead, play around with the idea of aiming for 35 to 40 FPS, with 40 FPS being the sweet spot. This will allow you to lower overclock settings, increase visuals, improve battery life and heat, and try using FSR and balance. I try not to go lower than balance because I feel like you sacrifice too much. But because the screen is so small and there's just more pixel density, the floors are less noticeable than on a typical 27-inch to 32-inch gaming monitor. My next tip is going to be watch your temps. Some people will jump in, max out all the settings because they want the highest resolution and FPS, but listen to me carefully, watch your temps. You'll soon realize that maxing out settings doesn't really add FPS, and all you're going to do is decrease battery life, increase temps, and increase strain on the device. Now, I'll admit that I'm one of these people who are neurotic about temps, but on these devices that are so small and don't really have an intricate cooling system, uh, keeping low temps might save your device, might help it last longer. I would say aim for 75C or under. I usually aim for 70. That's not going to always be the case for every game. Some games you're going to have to increase that TDP. Increasing the TDP is going to increase temps. Sort of have to find that sweet spot. All right, so as you can see, maxing out everything did not change our average FPS. All it did was add heat and add a little bit to the max FPS, but you shouldn't be focusing on a max FPS. You should be focusing on a stable FPS because stable FPS is going to reduce the amount of stutters and jutters that happen within the game when the game drops the FPS too much. You can see that it caused an extra 10C in temps for the same average FPS as 23 watt TDP did. That means that there's more strain on your device, you're going to get less battery life, and you're going to have your own personal heater just blowing all that air right into your face. So do yourself a favor, check your temps. You don't need to max out the settings. Try to find a sweet spot for your device, and I promise you, you'll have a better experience with it.